word chef is actually the French word for chief. In France, they have the chef de police, for example, which is the police chief, and the chef de cuisine, which would be the chef of a kitchen, the chief of a kitchen. And he runs the whole operation. He's the boss or the head man. Whether, you know, it's in America, it's usually associated with cooking, but the actual word just means chief.
Interesting.
After working for a few years in restaurants in different vocations, I then went to school when I decided I wanted to make a career out of it. I went to the Culinary Institute of America.
The CIA.
The CIA,
is also
very
known.
famous and excellent cooking school up in New York State, right up the Hudson River. Great education. And after graduation, I've worked in restaurants for several more years, and I worked my way up through the ranks to become an executive chef.
And what doesn't the executive chef do?
That's a loaded question. The definition of an executive chef, the textbook definition, a sous chef is the French word, again, sous means under. Like in France they say souterrain, which means the subway, which means under or underground, subground. Sous means under. A lot of these terms like chef and sous chef, chef de partie or saucier, these are words that are French words because the French were the first people to actually write the specifications for the positions and recipes. Definition is a chef of a multi-unit operation. In other words, it's not, I don't just run one kitchen. As you mentioned, it's the Merlot Bar and Grill, which is a full-service restaurant and bar. And of what a sous chef is, it's the guy directly under the chef. It's like a second in command. The same way in a corporation, you might have a president and an executive vice president and then vice presidents in charge. It's broken down the same way in restaurants. For example, I have sous chefs that are involved in the catering department, sous chefs involved in the jazz club, sous chefs involved in a lot of things, and then of course there are subordinates underneath them too. The amount of titles depends on the size of the operation. I'm in a very big operation, so I have the luxury of having to break it down into these departments and titles.
I see.
The way it works is there's the chef who's in charge of the operation, and his assistant or his number two would be the sous chefs. And their jobs are overseeing the operation. They're in a small operation, they might be involved in the actual hands-on production of food. But in a big operation where there's, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of food and equipment all coming into play at once, the guys that are actually behind the line cooking the entrees, like for example, if you order a salmon or a trout or a sole, if there's one guy who's just in charge of cooking those actual items to specification, his title is the poissonnier, and that is called a chef de partie position, or a chef of a certain area. There's quite a lot going on behind those closed doors. It's broke. You know, these days, as a matter of fact, there's a big trend to do what's called open kitchens. And up into, you know, we insiders break it up and we call it the front of the house and the back of the house. The front of the house being, like you said, the hostesses, the hosts, the maitre d's and managers, waiters and waitresses, bus boys, etc. Behind that door, that's where we come in. That's where the kitchen comes in. I prefer to have a division where people really can't see, because I think that traditionally you go out and you want to be served, and like you said, you look at it from a service aspect. What goes on in the back is what we're in charge of is taking raw product that we order through planning, and we turn that into a finished product or a plate of food for the customer to enjoy. The restaurant business is a service industry. It's a hospitality industry, and when people are working in their office, you know, they're not eating or whatever their job is. On nights and holidays and weekends when they go out, that's when we take over. That's when we work. And you know, in the industry that I'm in, especially in the area and the location, it's a nighttime, night spot, a weekend spot. So, you know, a lot of times, though there's somebody in the restaurant, people preparing in one form or another from 6 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the morning. I come in the afternoon and I try to oversee as much of it as I can, but you know, we don't begin preparing food until 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon for a 5 or 6 o'clock service. So, you know, the hours are definitely non-traditional. The middle of the average day is, you know, 1 o'clock for lunch. The middle of my day is 8, 9 o'clock after I've served the first 300 people their pre-theater meal on, while they're on their way to Lincoln Center. You've heard the term food trends.
Right.
Now, as a chef in a restaurant, we have to keep up with food trends. In other words, satisfying what people are looking for, and yet have that individuality, where we make our own statement and hope that people are going to come in just for what we're doing. So you have to have a balance, especially in a big city like New York, where you have a lot of different types of people coming for different reasons. These days, because of all the publicity and awareness about nutritional needs, different dietary guidelines and constraints, you see more and more customers coming into restaurants and asking for specific things. So we always want to satisfy customers. However, people go to different restaurants for different things, and we can't always do exactly what the customer wants. Sometimes they want to take a dish that's on our menu and try to change it in a different way.
Right.
And we try to adapt as best as we can. Unfortunately, we can't be all things to all people. Some restaurants are like, an example would be a diner. You go into a diner and you don't always have a menu. You ask for an English muffin with butter and jelly, and they're more flexible in terms of diversity. People are asking for things these days that they wouldn't have asked for 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
Egg white only omelets, no ham in this item, perhaps steamed vegetables in that item. They ask for mixing and matching, and we have to be as flexible as we can, and yet try to maintain the integrity of the food that we're trying to do. But these do come up more and more. People, what they do now, it's very interesting, and this happened to me twice last week for the first time. They gave me a card. A customer came in with this card, and it was literally
like
all
a
the
recipe?
No, it was all the things they were allergic to. Technically, my food service education started when I was in high school. When we took basic health, and I found that to be interesting. I learned a lot. My father had a high cholesterol and heart. He had heart disease. So in my house, we were pretty aware of some of the advances in the nutritional field and how the different things you eat can affect your diet and your life. When I was first starting out in restaurants, I had no real interest. I'm a thin guy. I had no real interest in the nutritional aspects of food. There were definitely courses, and they went really into the science of people. With regards to eggs, they're asking for egg white omelets, and what they're doing in diners is a good barometer of what they're doing in other restaurants, because they're